Time before William's family disappeared, and without knowing where they are, William wakes up on top of a boat, in the calm waters of a jungle. With his face tired and bewildered, he tries to search for a signal on his radio, but without getting any response. Then, after stepping on land, he comes across the chilling scene of some men dressed in black, who take the lives of others for the mere fact of not wanting to deny their faith. The persecution of Christians is happening, the signs are being fulfilled, that indicates that the world is reaching its final days. William, very confused, wonders, how did he end up in that situation? It is there that he begins to remember the beginning of the events that led him to his current situation. It happens that his life changed radically after that day, in which he travels on a plane, when after a strong explosion panic begins. He listens terrified to screaming children and desperate crying women. Suddenly the emergency alarm sounds and immediately everything is silent. Moments later William wakes up in the rubble with little air to breathe. It is there where he lives the worst moments of his life when he sees the victims without vital signs. William, as an agnostic like his wife, he thinks that being one of the few survivors of the plane crash is just luck, until he has an interview with a renowned astrophysicist named Hector, who is about to retire from where he has worked for more than 40 years. Hector tells him that he doesn't believe that he managed to survive by luck, but that it was God, who also explains that all events such as earthquakes, meteor showers, and eclipses are part of a series of warnings for the world. And he tells her that the end of the world is very close.
Fuimos advertidos.
This issue with Dr. Hector leaves William pensive and bewildered, who begins to doubt everything he thinks. That is why, once at home, he asks his wife Helen if he believes in the end of the world. But those memories of William after the accident, he brings them to his present, when in the jungle he buries one of the victims of the brutal attack, and then he finds Levi, a doctor, who is very injured, who saves the life of William of men who are persecuting people who remain firm in their faith. They then flee in a boat, and Levi tells him the harsh story of his life of being unfairly judged for his faith, and sentenced to prison for 30 years. Where he received punishment, mistreatment and abuse of all kinds against his person.
Tu comida.
Among so many humiliations that he suffered, one day Levi begs God to help him and suddenly the miracle happened. The prison door opens and his handcuffs are released, and there is no impediment to run towards freedom. But Levi no longer cares what they do to him, because he knows that the day of final judgment is drawing near, that it will come for everyone. After navigating for a while, they go through a cave where they meet Daniel, Levi's friend, and his wife Raquel, who begins to give birth, and it is precisely Levi who helps bring a girl into the world. Everything calm now, Daniel, being the third generation of pastors, who throughout his life has listened and made many sermons about the return of Jesus, also reaffirms that the end is yet to come and that we must continue in the higher authority. At that moment, William looks again at the photo of his family whom he is desperately looking for, while his mind returns to the moment of the first signs of the end of the world, and where his conversion process began, but also began the problems with his wife, who accuses her of changing after meeting Hector. In one of William's conversations with his wife, he asks Helen what would happen if there really were a heaven, a hell, and a savior.
Si realmente existiera.
But she definitely thinks that her friend Hector is messing with her ideas. His memories lead him to fall asleep, and the next day both William and Levi say goodbye to David, Raquel, and their baby, who decide to stay because they know that it is a difficult journey with the newborn girl. Before the persecution against Christians began, William had a good job, but he decided to quit after discovering the truth. That's why his ex-work colleagues make fun of him for having faith, but that doesn't matter to him anymore.
Buena suerte.
Then William, already unemployed, arrives at his house and discovers that his wife Helen and his son Sam are no longer there. His despair corners him, and tears fall uncontrollably as he stares at a torn photograph because Helen left him and went to her mother's house. And despite William's pleas for her to come back, and live happily with what she discovered, Helen refuses, claiming that he is not the same man she married. However, William accepts that he is not the same, but that he is a better man, but Helen does not understand and reproaches him for changing her family for nonsense. Later, he talks with Hector and listens to the prophecies, to then return to the present and continue living his odyssey with Levi, and upon reaching an abandoned house, suddenly an explosion is heard and some hunters arrive. And for William to continue and be able to find his family, Levi surrenders, leaving nothing else to do but leave without him. But it turns out that one of the hunters recognizes Levi as his brother. Seconds later, while William escapes, and another detonation is heard, which terrifies William, thinking that the worst happened. With tears in his eyes and desperate for help, he looks to the sky and begs for mercy. After a couple of hours, William is calmer and puts his thoughts aside and returns to reality, and once again calls Helen to tell her that he needs her, and again asks her to believe him and warns her that it is not safe to stay in the city. Desperate, he asks Helen to allow him to take her and her son to a safe camp. But she doesn't understand, nor does she want to believe anything William tells her, and hangs up on him. Minutes later, something out of the ordinary happens, where Helen's mother, very surprised, tells her daughter that she and her grandson had the same dream, which was about William taking them for a ride on a sailboat, but suddenly the color of the water changed to deep red, and that the smell it gave off was pestilential.
Maloliente.
Then Helen's mom tells her that at the end of the dream she had a horrible feeling, and also she felt like she couldn't move. This is why she insists that it was not just a dream, and reveals that she also knew the truth forever but did not pay attention to it. Helen does not understand what she is talking about, but her mother convinces her because she knows that everything is going to be fine. On the other hand, all the radio stations talk about the doomsday clock placed in New York, which symbolizes the imminence of a cataclysm on the planet, so anguish grows between William and Helen. Since the final hour is approaching, William decides to flee with Hector to a safer place, where he sends Helen the correct coordinates of the strategic point where he is going to meet her and her son. As they follow the path towards the camp to take refuge, they find some men watching, so they decide to continue without stopping, but that causes the men to attack and end Hector's life. But not before telling William what he should do is to find his family and save them.
Hasta aquel gran día.
William cries inconsolably for Hector and, terrified, feels that his options are running out. He takes his things and continues on his way on foot. The next day he arrives at a large abandoned construction. There he listens to a recording that was found when he was lost in the forest. It is of a girl who talks about the time that the planet's clock marks and says that something is wrong in the world, while he cries remembering his family until he falls asleep. The next morning, when he wakes up, he sees that there is a girl and runs to look for her. He is curious to know who she is and what she is doing there.
¿Dónde estás?
He then arrives at a camp inside the same abandoned structure, and there she is. Her name is Nadia, and she is the only one left of her family.
Ahí estás.
And it turns out that she is the owner of the recordings that William listens to.
¿Es tuyo?
They become friends, and he tells her the story from the creation of the world to the crucifixion of Jesus, for which they come to the conclusion that both Nadia and he are part of the remnant, which is nothing more than the people, who after the sacrifice of Jesus, the mission of God in this world will end. Then Nadia shows him some things left by the people who were in the camp, and William is surprised to see a photo of him pasted on the wall. That means his wife and his son were there. In addition, Nadia clarifies that this is not the only camp, that there is another. William's hopes of finding his family grow like his heartbeat. But there is also a lot of fear in him. Later that fear is interrupted by Nadia's nightmares, who wakes up crying, and after this they decide to leave very early for a nearby tower to look for a radio signal. They must be very careful because before arriving there is the area of the hunters.
Nadia!
Along the way they help another Christian who was left behind by the hunters and takes them to their settlement. There William is very surprised and with a heart full of joy to see Levi alive, who explains that one of the hunters was his brother, and after hesitating to kill him, his other partner threatens him and they both attack each other, both losing their lives.
Lucio!
After this meeting of hope and demonstration that he is not alone, William remains firm in the search for his family.
¿Quién es?
For his part, Levi and Nadia decide to accompany him to the tower, but some hunters chase him and are finally caught, and with this the hope of finding his family fades.
Tú me vas a contar.
The evil hunters threaten the girl to tell them where the camp is. But Nadia, very scared, in response to her request, begins to sing a beautiful song, and suddenly the melody begins to come out of the trees, from the sky, from everywhere, and everyone listens to it.
Pronto él vendrá.
Levi and William also begin to sing and follow the melody that begins by saying that God is here, and the enraged hunters continue to threaten them until they begin to fall to the ground one by one, tormented by the loud sound. And there the group of friends takes the opportunity to escape. Levi and Nadia remain behind and William goes ahead of the tower to test if there is a radio signal, but only interference is heard. Then he, desperate and without hope, giving up everything for lost, breaks down in tears feeling defeated. And when he thinks that he has lost his family, a woman's voice is heard on the radio. And at that moment, William's life makes sense again and he is filled with the color of hope, and both his firmness and his faith regain more strength when he recognizes that it is Helen, his wife, and that is how William finds his family. This is the summary of a Christian film, called O Retorno nos Fomos Avisados. Click here and do not miss the following story.